Hello and welcome to the future of classical music. I'm David Taylor, and this is my show about big ideas and the people behind them. This chat was recorded at the Classic Violin Olympus with jury member Marios Papadopoulos. Marios is a conductor and pianist who founded the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra in 1998. Now, founding an orchestra is no easy thing, so I was really interested to hear the journey from idea to an orchestra performing 40 concerts a year. And with lots changing since 1998, I was also fascinated to hear how the orchestra has adapted over the years. We also talked about how the role of musicians has changed in this period, and Marios' thoughts on the skills that soloists need to thrive in the modern industry. I hope you enjoy. Let's jump in. Marios, it is great to see you. Thank you so much for joining me on the show. I have so much I want to talk to you about today, so thank you for finding the time.
Thank you, David.
You are a musician, you are a conductor, a pianist, a founder of the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra. We are also here at the Classic Violin Olympus. As if you're watching the video, you can tell by the very subtle branding above Marios' head. Before we jump into the competition, I'd like to take things back to your career and hear a little bit more about the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra, which was founded in 1998, is that correct?
Correct.
I've done my homework well. So, orchestras are a difficult thing to run at the best of times. They're complicated, they're stressful for pre-existing established orchestras. What was the inspiration behind starting an orchestra yourself?
Well, I was involved in the musical life of Oxford for a number of years before that. And I just saw an opportunity to start something anew, to start something which may differ from other orchestras, particularly in the UK. Also, I have no problem in confessing, for selfish reasons. I wanted a platform of my own. Where I could control things as I saw best, and we just went for it. And things were difficult, of course, at the beginning, no doubt about that. On a number of occasions, I threatened to throw in the towel, but we persevered.
Yes.
And here we are, nearly 27 years later, and the orchestra is thriving, doing well.
It's incredibly hard work, so huge congratulations for doing it. I know
Very kind, thank you very much.
Experience, like you say, the moments of throwing in the towel or existential despair that come along these journeys, they're always fun. So with that, there's obviously this idea. What were your first steps in then making an orchestra? How did that look like as a journey to get going at the very beginning?
Well, I had a number of targets that I wanted to aim for. One was to create a special sound, and so I wanted to have that beautiful, what one might call English bed of roses, and to that I added some spice by bringing in some Eastern European players, actually. So over the years, we've I think developed a distinct sound, so I was in touch, obviously, with some musicians I was familiar with, and had a lot of help from colleagues, and tried to approach some people for funding. That was very, very crucial. But I suppose the watershed moment was when the university adopted the orchestra as its orchestra in residence. And the reason for that is that at the time, there was very little really help to instrumentalists studying music at Oxford. So, a wonderful, obviously, academic program, but there's no tuition offered in instrumental playing, and a lot of very fine students played the an instrument at a high level. This is where we came in. We offered them guidance, some tuition, performance opportunities. And then the university, I think, recognized that and then wanted to somehow structure it in a more official way.
It's fascinating to think with Oxford having such a history of excellence and music, but also musical excellence with the core program things that there wasn't something like this before. It seems to be sort of a match in that sense.
Yeah. Well, for a while, I think my colleagues will be the first to admit that performance was frowned upon.
Yeah.
And things have changed considerably since, I'm pleased to say.
Well, I'm very glad to hear. Was this something you had experience doing before in creating and running an orchestra, or was this your first go and learning as you went along with all of this?
Yes, learning as we went along. Yes, it was not an easy operation to run, and at first, I had to do a lot of things, which I'm pleased to say I've delegated to other people, including, designing publicity material. I had crash courses on design and accounting and things I'd never sort of encountered in my previous life, just to kickstart the whole operation. But as I said, we persevered, and I think we aimed very, very high in terms of performance and the quality of playing. And I think that people recognized that, and I'm in no way, of course, complacent. There's always a lot of room for improvement. But as musicians of stature began to recognize the quality of the orchestra, then we began to form close relationships with some great artists, and we're enormously privileged to have their association.
It's fantastic, and from having a slightly similar journey of starting from scratch and having to do everything yourself at the beginning, I think it's interesting to find what you are energized by and what you find hard. And I always say I'm no loss to the accounting world. It was always the thing I couldn't wait to offload as soon as possible to someone who actually knew what they're doing with
Absolutely, but
you do what you have to.
do what you have to, indeed. Yeah.
Certainly. So with Oxford, we have this city that's incredibly diverse. There's elements of the university and this big audience there, but also the flip side of some areas of deprivation like Blackbird Leys, etc. How do you go about building an audience from scratch when you are starting? Obviously, you've got the musicians and the excellence, but how do you then start to get this loyal fan base?
Again, very, very difficult. I mean, at the beginning, we were struggling. And I remember we had raised a little bit of money, I think, to run the first 3 concerts. And we weren't selling very well. And I think by the time the third came around, someone I entrusted the running of the orchestra to rang me and said, I was abroad at the time, said, unfortunately we have no more money to run the third concert. And I've consulted some of the trustees. Nobody's interested in supporting it, so I'm afraid we have to cancel the third concert. To which my answer was, over my dead body. You do that and, the whole thing is dead. So I knocked around and borrowed money from a relative whom I paid back, of course, to salvage the operation. At that stage, I took over the complete running of the organization and somehow survived. So it was very difficult. Again, I think another watershed moment, David, was after I think about 2 years, I decided to do a Beethoven series, a cycle actually. Did all the symphonies, all the piano concertos, because I knew Beethoven, because it was popular. But then I invited John Souchet, who was at the time at the Anchor with was ITV News at 10 or BBC, I can't remember. who, as you know, has a passion. Beethoven has written a lot about Beethoven, to introduce the concerts. So that was a huge success. That just brought in the crowds for a number of concerts, and that slowly gave us a good audience on which to build.
Fantastic. I think we rarely ever speak of these almost slightly more stressful, darker moments, and that must have been the stress around that third concert, this break moment, but a huge testament to the courage and seeing the opportunity to move forward through it. It's always something that we tend not to speak about in this industry as much as we probably should do.
Yeah, I mean, I suppose a lot of people say to me, you've managed to do this, you've managed to do that, you've managed to raise a lot of money and all that. And I keep saying, I think my answer to that is, whatever I did was for self-defense. If I didn't do it, it would go down.
Yeah.
So it's not because I enjoy fundraising or doing this task or that task. If you didn't do it, you'd go down. You've got to defend yourself. And defend not only myself, my colleagues, for whom I was responsible, in a way.
Certainly. Well, incredible work to do that. Obviously, the orchestra's come a long way. I know you said that was 3 concerts in the first year. How many concerts do you do roughly now a year?
Well, we're about 40, 50.
So it's increased exponentially.
Aiming to reach 60, and that's where I will cap it.
Yes.
I don't want any more.
No, time for a bit of a rest at that point. But I think the industry's changed so much over that time. I imagine the orchestra will as well, but our world has. I was doing some digging about what happened in 1998, and that was a period where we had dial-up internet. It was the year Google launched. At the time, Yahoo was the biggest search engine. Nokia was the biggest selling phone, and Titanic had only just been released in December just before. So since then we've had Facebook, YouTube is now 20 years old this month, I think. So there's been huge radical transformation in our society. How has the Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra adapted, and how do you think orchestras have adapted over this period?
Well, obviously, we had to run with the times. I confess that I have no experience in marketing or social media. And again, I was very fortunate, we were very fortunate to have procured the services of people who had a lot more expertise in that. Over to them to convey the message. But, David, you can do as much as you can or as you like in trying to promote something, but unless there's substance behind the product, it will just not fly. The tools are there and have been provided by all the names you just mentioned, but you've got to have also something tangible that is worth talking about.
Yeah, almost like you can promote an empty box, but this isn't the thing in the box, then almost what's the point with it? So
exactly.
And I guess as well that has an element of consistency through there, that there's the core and the identity of the orchestra stays the same, that they're all the way through this period of change, but it's just how you interact going forward.
Exactly, yeah.
And it's looking forwards and a bit more existential. How do you see orchestras adapting to thrive in this ever-changing world going forwards?
Well, there are a lot of challenges. I think we are being completely independent. I think we depend a lot more of what our audiences want us to do. Oxford has a very, very conservative musical taste. At the same time, there's no other orchestra anywhere near us. I suppose the nearest would be Birmingham to the north, and of course the London Orchestra to the south. So we have, if I could put it this way, virgin territory, and we can program whatever we like.
Yeah.
I don't have to go to the Barbican or South Bank and say, who else is doing this work either side of the date I would like. No, we can do whatever we like, which is great. And so, yeah, we encourage new work, we encourage new competitions, particularly through our association with the university, which we enjoy. But then, we have a discerning audience, which is something that I enjoy a great deal. I mean, earlier I said I did a lot of this for selfish reasons. Well, yes, because, as a musician, I want to speak to somebody. I want my voice heard. And if I have a receptive ear, that makes me feel a lot more comfortable and a lot more creative. So it's a little bit of a tennis game. I throw the ball out, they throw it back at me. And I've known these people for a long time. And, somebody would come after the concert and actually quite enjoyed what you did there tonight. Or I didn't like the way you twisted this phrase. And so, there is that sort of interaction, which is marvelous, yeah.
And I imagine quite unique being sort of a founder, musical director, conductor for 27 years, having that trust and intimacy and knowledge of what your audience expects, rather than being almost potentially an anonymous blob of audience members with no connection. There's a cellist, Jamie Walton, who lives in North Yorkshire now, who runs the North Yorkshire Moors Music Festival. And up there, it's very much a traditional concert-going audience, very conservative. And Jamie programs the most bonkers pieces, lots of Schoenberg, Stockhausen, these sort of things. And he tells a story about one of the festivals, I think he did some Stockhausen piece, and a very rural Yorkshire farmer came up to the end saying, "I hated every second of that. I'll see you next week." So it still maintains that element of trust and connection and community that you can still have. We've talked a lot about adapting for the orchestra, and I'm going to bring it now full circle back to the Classic Violin Olympus here in Dubai. You started your career as a pianist, and obviously you've adapted with being a conductor, a founder, almost an accountant in some scenarios. How do you see the role of a soloist and instrumentalist has changed over the years, and what do you think that the competitors here will need to do in future to be able to thrive as well?
Yeah, no, I think that's a very good question, and I think that these days a musician has to be a lot more than just that. I think we take it for granted that you will have a outstanding technique, but it's a very competitive world out there, as we know, and you need more skills, I think, to be able to just break through. I remember, was it 1971, 72, somewhere there, early 70s. I had won the Young Musician of the Year competition run by the Wise, I can't remember what it was at the time, GLA. And one of the first things they did for us all, there were winners in different categories, so I had won the piano category, was to create almost a seminar with some agents and promoters to teach us how to promote ourselves. So we're all there as administrators of our own careers. And I thought that was just so useful. So perhaps that's missing a little bit in our education of young musicians. So yeah, I think it requires a lot more than just being able to play your instrument well.
Certainly, I won't ask you to comment on any of the competitors here directly, but when you're, say, for example, programming, you're looking for new artists that you want to include in your season, what are the things that would stand out in that scenario that may also be of benefit to, say, advice to some of the competitors here?
Well, I'm really just pointing the obvious here, but many organizations, many orchestras, many festivals will either program something that's very popular in order to draw an audience or bring in a well-known name. So here we are faced with 12 outstanding violinists who all aspire to have more exposure, and they approach somebody like me, I mean, I'm a very small fish, but I still, I'm a promoter in a way, and I have certain criteria. So, yeah, the first thing I would look at, obviously, is their musicianship, their stage presence, because that captivates or not an audience. What new approach might they bring to a well-known piece of music which does not, and I emphasize, does not resort to gimmicks? I completely abhor the idea of somebody doing something different for the sake of being different, which has absolutely no musical validity. So these are criteria that I would look for. But I don't know. I get a lot of letters and emails from youngsters writing to me, "Oh, I would love to come and play with the marvelous Oxford Philharmonic Orchestra under your wonderful leadership," and all that. To which my answer sometimes is, "Do you know, I don't do blind dates." I mean, when was it that you came to hear me or the orchestra to say how wonderful we are and how you would love to come and work with us?
Yeah.
So the answer is, well, I haven't been to any of your concerts. So why do you so much want to work with us? Come to a concert. Show me that there's something you enjoyed about it. And come and talk to me. I'm very happy, very approachable. And then, I can see that you're interested, in that, and then we can take it further. So that's perhaps one piece of advice I might give to some of the youngsters. Make yourself available at a human level and show an interest which is genuine, and I'll be very happy to talk.
I think that's one thing we always, or can regularly forget with when it comes to pitching, that we must email everyone under the planet to try and get work. Or actually, depth might be a better way of approaching things that I'll do too, but I'll make sure they are focused with people I connect with, and like you say, really focus on that human level as well.
Yeah. Yes, as simple as that. Or the other thing which I take an issue with is, you get a soloist, they play their concerto, and after the interval they shoot off. Or I have a train to catch. Or I have, show me respect, stay for the second half, and that I appreciate. And Sophie Mutter, great violinist. You know how many, she's done a lot of concerts with us. She plays the concerto, in the second half she's in the audience.
I love that.
Beautiful, it's part of this sort of arrogant, I've done my thing, done my job, not for me.
No, I think it's a much nicer way. And it leads on to another question, actually, that we often try and think of getting that first piece of work. But what would you say gets the re-invitation to have an ongoing relationship with an orchestra? You've mentioned, obviously, this human level of connecting and respect events. What other things would help you then re-invite someone for the next time?
That's a very good question. I mean, I think that, obviously, you played well, good audience feedback. We must not, and I think another advice to youngsters, do not underestimate the importance of a conductor. A lot of orchestras might have a music director, might even have an artistic director who has nothing to do with music performance. Makes decisions, though, in consultation with principal conductor, maybe, or whatever. But at the end of the day, if a conductor wants to bring in a soloist, they will. Make my life easy. Make my life enjoyable. And, I will, of course, not forget you. Again, so many different experiences. I've never had very, very well-known, big career violinists came to play Rachmaninoff's Second Piano Concerto, I remember. You know that big tutti at the end. What does a piano do? Lots of chords, and we have the tune. She turned around and wanted to pace and phrase that just because she played all these chords. I said, I'm sorry, this is our moment of glory. Just accompany us. We're not accompanying you on your chords. She will never get invited back.
Yeah.
You know when you have to say something and know when you need to shut up and follow. And again, something I think youngsters need to understand when they're learning a concerto is when they need to be subordinate, when they need to lead. It's a two-way street. So yeah, a lot of things.
Mm. But really good points, and it's I think you're sort of almost focusing on collaboration, which is what you tend to not necessarily think from a very stereotypical, old-fashioned version of a soloist, that they are there to be in a spotlight and lead, as you say, but actually it being more of a...
Yeah, or, people intervening with what you do. Oh, this here. Oh, this here. Shush.
Yeah.
I'm not out of college yesterday. All right, just let's work together. Let's discuss things, it's what you say, a collaboration.
Wonderful. Well, I'm now going to move on to the two questions that I ask everyone. So I'm really fascinated to hear what you say to these. Small, easy question. If you could change one thing in the industry, what would it be and why?
Gosh.
Told you it was easy.
I'm not sure whether there's one answer that somehow covers everything. But I mean, at the end of the day, why are we doing this? And the reason, at least for me, is that I love music. I live music. I breathe music. What gives me enormous pleasure is to share my passion of music with others. So the more opportunities I'm given to do that, the happier I am. So anything, whether it's political or whether it's whatever, that interferes with that is anathema to me. So, and why do I say that? Because, we all depend, of course, on funding, but there's some organizations that put so many demands on you and criteria that they sort of almost handcuff you. So liberate musicians and allow them to do their job and to convey the beautiful message of music to as far wider audience as possible.
Fantastic. And then with sort of a positive, happy ending, looking into the bright future, what gives you hope for the future of classical music and where do you see opportunity?
Oh gosh, for me, a glass is always half full. So, I'm so happy when I've shared a musical moment with somebody and perhaps made them discover something which gives them a lot of pleasure. I remember I had a teacher when I was a teen, mid-teens, I guess, musicianship teacher, a wonderful man. And he would come to my house for lessons, and he'd ask me, "Oh, do you know this piece of music?" I said, "No, Mr. Pataccioni was his name." "Oh, you're so lucky." I said, "Why? You have so many things, so what a wonderful thing to discover."
Yeah.
And I take the same view. I would love to just share my passion with others and make them discover the tremendous treasures that we are very fortunate, on this earth to have had sort of shared with us.
I'd like to thank Marios Papadopoulos for taking the time to join me on the podcast, and thank you for listening. If you'd like to let me know what you think to the podcast, any requests for topics, or in fact, anything else, you can email david@david-taylor.org or reach out on LinkedIn, Instagram, Threads, or Blue Sky. You can find links to all of these at david-taylor.org. If you like the podcast, please share it with your friends and subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, and I'll see you next time.